Okay. So we again are going to get started with our careers in tax law presentation. Just a couple of housekeeping matters before we get started. We are recording this presentation, so if you do not wish to be recorded, feel free to log off now. And we will also be posting and uploading this presentation to our office's YouTube channel, and we will send out a link to the students and panelists as well. If you'd like to review the discussion at a later date, we'll make sure to get you guys a link to the recording. We want to, again, thank all of our students for taking time to join us, but we especially would like to thank and welcome our panelists who we have here today. We have Courtney Hill, who is a Thurgood alumna, and she's going to be moderating our panel discussion this afternoon. We also have Joy Nama, who is another Thurgood alumnus. So welcome, Courtney and Joy. And we have two Johns with us tonight. We have John Strohmeyer and John Brusniak, who are here with us this afternoon. And they're going to be all sharing a little bit more with you about their career paths in tax law. And with that, welcome everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Courtney, who is going to lead our discussion tonight. And Courtney, since we have kind of a more intimate group, would you like students to kind of ask questions as they come up as we go along, or would you like them to enter them into the chat?
Sure. Let's put them into the chat for now.
Okay.
And then as I see them or as you see them, I'll try and include them in the discussion.
Sounds good. So students, as we're talking this afternoon, if you have a question, please enter it in the chat and I will get to them as they appear. Thanks.
Awesome. So thank you, Nikki. Hi, everybody. As she said, we're here on behalf of the State Bar of Texas tax section. And what we're going to be doing is talking to you guys about careers in tax law or different type of areas of practice that you can get into. I want to start off, though, by kind of letting you know who you're talking to, well, or, you know, who's talking to you. So the four of us are going to be your panelists for today. We're going to start with Joy. I'm not sure if you're in this actually in the same view setting as me, so if you can just find her on your screen so I don't have to point. So Joy Nama is a general tax attorney with the Office of Chief Counsel for Internal Revenue Service in the SBSE division. Her practice focuses primarily on tax controversies that involve self-employed individuals, small businesses, and individual taxpayers. She joined the Office of Chief Counsel straight out of law school via the Chief Counsel's Honors Program. As was stated earlier, she graduated from Thurgood Marshall School of Law in 2018. She was the salutatorian of her graduating class. During her time as a law student, Joy served the school in various capacities, including as the school's Honor Court Chief Justice and as a student ambassador. Before law school, Joy attended the University of North Texas, where she graduated summa cum laude with a joint degree in alternative dispute resolution and studies and applied arts and sciences. That is Miss Joy. Next, we have John Strohmeyer. He is the proprietor of Strohmeyer Law PLLC in Houston, where he assists individuals and their businesses with cross-border tax planning, estate planning, and estate administrations. John is board certified in tax law and estate planning and probate law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization. John is a fellow of the American College of Trust and Estate Council, the ACTEC, which is the cool kids club for estate planners. I got that part down. John is the chair of the International Tax Committee of the State Bar of Texas tax section. He was named Rookie of the Year by the tax section as well. He was the 2015 to 2017 fellow of the American Bar Association section of Real Property, Trust, and Estate Law, and was a young leader of the American College of Trust and Estates Council. John earned a BS in zoology from the University of Texas at Austin. So that is John Strohmeyer. Last but not least, we have John Brusniak. John Brusniak is the Dean of Property Tax Lawyers in Texas, having started practicing in the property tax field in 1981, which predates the creation of the Texas Property Tax Code. He has handled thousands of cases in district court across the state, the vast majority of which were settled, but quite a few were tried. He has been involved in over 45 appeals to the courts of appeals across the state of Texas and 2 appeals to the Texas Supreme Court, both of which were successful. John helped to start and develop the National Association of Property Tax Attorneys. He served as its president for more than 20 years. John has been recognized continually as a Texas super lawyer and is one of the best lawyers in America. He was honored with the Wayne Federal Award at the Real Estate Center of Texas A&M University and with the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Texas Oil and Gas Association. John has served as the chair of the Property Tax Committee of the Tax Section of the State Bar of Texas, the chair of the Property Tax Committee of the Real Property Committee of the American Bar Association, and the chair of the entire tax section of the State Bar of Texas. John also serves as on the board of directors of the Texas Taxpayers and Research Association. That is John Prusniak. And I guess I can introduce myself as well. I'm Courtney Hill. Like Nikki said, I graduated from Thurgood in 2012. I was valedictorian of my graduating class. I also work in the Office of Chief Counsel with Joy in a different state. Well, no, same state, different city. I am a special assistant United States attorney with the Department of Justice in the Southern District of Texas. I'm also, shout outs to me, an adjunct professor at Thurgood, teaching a tax seminar over the summer. So if you guys want to register for my class, I am Professor Hill, and I'll be teaching the seminar in taxation this summer. So I feel like you guys kind of have a good idea of who's talking to you and who you're dealing with. So what I'm going to do now is just jump right into the questions. Like Nikki said, if you want to put your questions into the chat as we go, I'll try and fit them in. Otherwise, I'll save maybe 5 to 10, 15 minutes. We'll see how we're flowing towards the end to try and answer everybody's questions. So first, and this question is going to be directed towards Joy, but everybody please chime in if you have something different. I'm sure the students would like to hear the various perspectives. So Joy, how did you end up practicing tax law? So I just read your bio. They kind of know who you are, but how did you get on the path to tax law and where you are today?
Yeah, it's quite interesting that you're the one asking the question. Yeah, I say that because Courtney actually was part of the team that interviewed me in law school for my job. So it's come full circle. Anyway, tax law, I mean, I'm sure everyone knows that. It's not one of those classes that you jump right into. So for me, it's a very unique story because right out of bed, I knew I was going to go into public interest law for sure. I knew I have young kids. But what it was for me was, I don't know if my school still does it, but the students, I think they should know better. But when I was a student, my school had a program where when students failed to make, I think, either 2.0 or 2.5 GPA, they are required to take a federal income tax. Now, I had a classmate of mine who today is more like a brother to me. He didn't meet that GPA, okay? So it was like, Joy, you got to take this class, otherwise I'm not gonna pass it. So because of him, I signed up. And I signed up for the class, enjoyed it, and ended up enjoying the class. So when my professor was like, Joy, I knew it, I fell in love with it. And then when the position came out open, I applied. But because I enjoyed it so much, myself and a couple of my classmates, because then it was only federal income tax that the school was offering. So we went and met up with Professor Asabama, and we pleaded with him, and he agreed and taught corporate tax law. So I ended up taking corporate tax law too. But when I applied, I got lucky, interviewed with you, and that is how I joined the Office of Chief Counsel.
Excellent. John S., so from a BS in zoology to tax law, how does one get on that trajectory?
Oh, it's not obvious, is it? No, not only did I give up on my dreams of being a doctor after I started working in a hospital and realized that was not for me, I took 4 years between college and law school to go work for the Four Seasons Hotels as a way of just, taking a break, before going back. So then I went back, got my JD, got my LLM in tax, because when I was at JD level, it's like, oh, well, this tax class, it seems like a good class. Like I enjoyed basic tax, so I took corporate and international, and then just took all the tax classes they could give me, then went and got my LLM. And so it just kind of made sense. I stumbled into it to fulfill a requirement, and ended up enjoying it, and that's where I am now.
John B., over to you.
You know, I started off my career planning on doing what Joy and John S. and Courtney are doing. And I was an accounting major in college. I interned 2 years as a revenue agent at the IRS. Went to law school and had my worst grade in law school in corporate income tax. And that kind of told me, maybe this is not for me. I did intern or clerk at the U.S. Claims Court, but went into the government contract aspects, and from there into general litigation, and then stumbled in, as John S. said, into property tax in 1981. And it was a case nobody else wanted to handle in the law firm, and the partner said, "You're it," and I was it. And I got to like the people I was working with. I got to like the area, and I sort of grew up in it. It's very different from the other traditional federal tax types of practices, but it was fun. It's fun for me still today.
Excellent. So you mentioned that you had kind of accounting background. Do you feel like it's necessary to have accounting or finance backgrounds in order to be successful in a tax attorney environment? John B., I'll stick with you on that.
No, not at all. What you have to have is an active curiosity in how things work. You have to, that's your first start. I mean, I don't know that anybody else I've worked with has had a finance or an accounting background other than myself. But it's fun because, if you want to know what the economics are that makes a shopping center work, how do they work? How does an office building make money? How does anything else make money? Apartments, and then what are they worth based on how they make money? Yeah, you don't get bored in this area, but you have to be really, really interested.
Right. John S., you mentioned that you went and got an LLM in tax after you finished your law school courses. So do you feel that the LLM was important for you to have a career in tax without that type of finance or accounting background?
Exactly. I got it to prove to people when I graduated. So I graduated law school 2009 and my LLM in 2010. So there were already not many jobs around. And because I didn't have the background in accounting or finance, this was a way of showing, no, I'm not just trying to find any job that I can find right now. I'm actually serious about this. What I say, I'm interested in tax. Plus, one of my professors in law school had said, well, look, there's so much tax, there was a time when you could come out and pick up the tax on your own, but there's just so much, and there's so much complexity with it. It really helped. Like I ended up coming out of my LLM in my first 6 months. There was one project where we were calculating penalties on a tax issue for a client, and I was looking at the numbers. I was like, this 30-year accountant who the partners really like is very wrong. And it was something that I'd learned how to calculate backwards and forwards in my LLM program. And I was able to go to the partners and say, like, this is not how they do this, and the CPA got it wrong. So it wasn't putting the CPA on blast immediately, but just having the confidence and having seen things that you're just not gonna end up working with a lot of CPAs, or at least I end up working with a lot of CPAs. Having that confidence in, oh, this is how this works, and seeing how what I do lines up with what the CPAs do.
Yes. So Joy, you didn't take the LLM route. You started working straight out of law school. So do you feel like you were at a disadvantage because you didn't have an LLM, or how did your transition work into going straight from law school into working in tax?
Not necessarily, because like I mentioned earlier, Chief Counsel gets students straight out of law school through the honors program. It's not, and then they do get some students from the LLM. I know my classmate went on to get an LLM before joining us, but I don't think, like John S. said, is all you need, if you ask me, is really a curious mind. You know, it is an advantage if you have it, but with Office of Chief Counsel, we have tremendous resources available. You know, we are pretty much the biggest tax firm in the nation, and you're literally working daily with the best tax minds you can ever find, and we have all the resources you need. So it's not like I don't think I ever struggled. Tax law naturally is complex. It requires that you constantly studying, because the laws are always changing and evolving, and you got to keep, trying to keep up with it. But other than that, I think what any candidate needs is actually a curious mind, critical thinking skills, and maybe be sure to know your research. And I think you should be fine.
Right, I definitely agree. From where we work for the Office of Chief Counsel, it is the biggest firm in the country as far as tax goes, and we do have a lot of resources for sure. But John S., you own your own practice essentially, is what I gather. So do you feel that, can you kind of explain what a day would be like for you as owning your own practice as a tax attorney?
It's different every day. I'd worked for a few different firms before. A few years ago, I decided to start my own. It was in part, I was, I'd gotten a lot of background. I kind of knew how to handle things for myself. But what I really wanted was the control over how to direct and manage client relationships. And, I had that first career working for the Four Seasons Hotel. And so I ended up kind of incorporating more of what I've learned, or what I learned working at the hotel, into how I deliver services and kind of the mindset. It's, going forward, better or worse, we're competing with, Rocket Lawyer, LegalZoom, DIY on the internet. So how do we as lawyers survive? It's not just having access to the law or some set of forms. It's how do we make it easy for clients to say, no, I'd rather get this from a lawyer, even though it's going to cost me more. It's kind of how do we set things up to take better care of those clients?
Do you practice mostly in federal income taxation?
So because I do tax and estate planning, it overlaps. One, I don't go to court other than for uncontested hearings in probate, but the tax ramifications of what I'm doing generally are federal. So it's federal, individual, estate and gift tax, some income tax, trust taxation, as well as international issues for individuals.
John B., do you find that with property tax in the areas that you work in, that it overlaps with federal income taxation, or is it really a completely different animal?
It's really a completely different animal. I'm not going to tell you that I haven't looked at the federal law over time, and particularly when we get into issues of interstate commerce. The Texas Constitution that says that all real and personal property, unless exempted specifically, is taxable. And that means that I can look out my window. Every time I drive out my car, I can see potential clients. And so, and what we really do is talk about what's fair. If you own a house, you own a business, what is your hard assets worth? But as I said, we've had some fun cases involving interstate commerce. And the complete auto case and all of those other things that you probably have studied in law school. They are real, live, and viable in the world. I have had issues with whether federal gold and silver coins are taxable, and that issue turns on a federal statute. And so we do touch onto the federal stuff, but no, it's a very, very local practice. 50 states, 50 different ways of coming out and figuring out what stuff is worth, 50 different ways of what your rights and remedies are. I mean, my day is fixated on probably talking to clients. A new person called with a problem on an over-the-road truck, and why is he getting tax bills, and why is he having to pay penalties? Because he thinks he's right. You know, I've got a vast oil field in West Texas. The question is, what's it worth in the government? And we have totally different views of it. We have some refiners, we do apartments. I mean, it's you name the type of property, and I will have done it either for an exemption, and which are always a lot of fun, because generally do-gooders get themselves in a lot of trouble because they're just trying to do good, and the like. So it's an area that it's hard to get bored in, because you're constantly talking to people and strategizing and trying to understand, why is something worth something.
Were there any courses that you took in law school that were not, that were not tech, that helped you?
I will tell you that the class that if you enjoyed your real property class,
Okay.
that would help. I have taught, occasionally at SMU at the graduate level, just one day talking about how property tax work, but there really nobody talks about it. And it is the biggest tax, state and local tax in Texas. It's about 54% of all state and local revenue. In other words, this local tax is bigger than all the rest of the taxes, the state taxes. So it's there's just a lot of opportunity in it.
Okay.
So it's fun.
Joy, so you went to Thurgood, so there are limited tax classes available to students to take, especially since you went through so much to try and get Dean Ansavamo to teach corporate tax. Were there any classes outside of tax tax in the title, that you thought were beneficial to take in order to be successful as a tax attorney?
Yeah, I think classes like Federal Rules of Evidence, there's procedural class, civil procedure, you can't go wrong with that. Writing classes is when you do lawyering process, know your research, because of the complexities of tax law, you're constantly researching. And so for you to keep up with the evolving nature of tax law, I think is a huge plus, knowing your research class and knowing it really good.
Same with you, John S. I mean, anything out there? Yes, please.
Georgia triggered me here, not in a bad sense. But yeah, if you're going to look at your classes, your civil procedure class is critical. Any trial prep class is critical. We don't try a lot of cases, but when we do, we do. And it's all out, and you better have all your I's dotted. Your pleadings better be right. You better have done your discovery correctly, because once you get in that courtroom, it's showtime. And so if you like that stuff, like presentation, this is
right
for you. Sorry for the interruption.
No, you're fine. And John S., you mentioned that you don't go to court as much.
Oh, no.
If at all. But were there any other classes, besides trial prep, evidence, federal rules, civil procedure, that you think are helpful outside of tax courses?
Yeah, I mean, I go so far as to put in my engagement letters, I'm not a litigator. If anything gets contentions get filed, like it literally says there, you are required to hire a real litigator, otherwise I will fire you as a client, and you agree to this. This is not, I'm not dabbling in that. I don't have time for that, and neither do my clients. So yeah, so what do I do? If I'm not worried about trial prep, it's the wills and estates, the kind of knowing the property law, because my practice ends up looking a lot like, kind of a general family lawyer, not in divorce, adoption, family lawyer, but I get all these questions all the time. I mean, a client today was asking, I wrote these checks with a credit union in 2015 and 2016. I need copies of those to get ready for litigation. How do we do this? I was like, well, I can get a letter together and I'm going to go drop it by her house later tonight. But it really is it's like, there's so much that you just don't even know. And, like taking a look at construction agreements for clients, just as a first look, there's a lot of things of just, general law, for lack of a better term, because of the nature of an estate planning practice.
So we're hearing wills and trusts, estates, property, contracts, federal civil procedure, evidence. Seems like probably all of the classes that you're taking can kind of find their way into tax practice. So I know a question that a lot of people will have is, you have Joy, who does federal income taxation with the government. You have John S. that does estate planning with his own practice. You have John B. that does property tax all over Texas. Do you find that you get pigeonholed into a certain type of tax practice once you find your niche? Or are you able to switch from one area of taxation to another? I know a lot of students are hesitant that if I go into tax, I'll never be able to switch into another practice area. I won't look valuable on a resume to go work for a large firm if they don't have any openings in their tax department. So let's go with Joy.
I think for me, my job, I don't feel pigeonholed, because it's quite a varied area. Every day is a different thing. My caseload goes from dealing with 1040s to 1120s. It could be deduction, accuracy related penalty. And because of the way chief counsel is structured, remember, we have different divisions. So you can be in large business and business and international. Those ones handle cases from say over $10 million. And then you have the SBAC, which is where my office, small business and self-employed. And then we have a criminal tax, which is pretty much what it is. And then you have TEGE. And the way chief counsel is structured, which is what makes it beautiful. At any point in time, you can actually transfer, because we have the master first consideration list if you want to be reassigned. So you can get reassigned. Say you've been working with SBAC for a while and you want to try out large business and international. You can just reassign, apply for it, get reassigned to ABNI, or you can try it out with TEGE or criminal tax. But beyond that, even if you stay with SBAC, there's always a whole lot of work. You could be doing with non-cash charitable contributions today. Tomorrow you could be dealing with fraudulent transfers. You're drafting legal advice, maybe to clients with this is a collection agency, or you're drafting defense letters for DOJ. So there's always something. And I think all these skills, when you acquire them, could easily transfer. I've seen a lot of, like my manager, I believe he used to teach at SMU. So I've seen a lot of chief counsel like you're doing. You're already teaching in the law school. So you don't feel pigeonholed. You can easily transfer these skills to, say, becoming a law professor or going in-house, or whatever. So I think tax law, there's no boring moment.
Okay. John B., same question. Do you feel like if you get into property tax, you're kind of stuck there now for your career, or do you seem like you have places to go from there?
Oh gosh, at age 69, I think I'm kind of stuck.
69? I wouldn't have guessed, sir.
I won't know. I mean, this is a litigation practice. Right. And there's a handful. First of all, the docket's divided between the government and taxpayer representative lawyers. And so people who are good litigators can do this. There are lawyers that are not specialists. who kind of do this, say, part-time, and the rest of their time is done doing family law or something else. You don't have to do this full-time, and if you don't like it, you can certainly move on, because you've developed basically skills that translate to any other area, yeah, of the practice. Now, as a practical matter, the people that I know that have moved around have stayed in the area. Some government people have switched sides. I don't know of anybody who went the other way. But I could do it. I mean, it's just you change your viewpoint. But as a practical matter, yeah, I mean, the people end up liking the area and they stick with it. And yeah, so I think I've answered you.
Right. No, I agree. I think it's one thing to keep in mind that it's okay to be a specialist in a certain area, but that doesn't mean that you have to limit yourself to that area of practice. So if you do come out of school and you practice and do tax law for a little while, that doesn't mean that you then can't fall back on criminal law or contract disputes or whatever other interests that you did have. It's the same thing as law school. And that's with any practice area. Keep that in mind. So if you do come out of law school and you go work for the DA's office, let's say, don't feel that now you can't have a future in some type of tax law because you've already started in that trajectory. So keep that in mind with any type of practice that you decide to do after law school, that you're not going to really be limited. You'll be limited as much as you limit yourself, right? John S., if you wanted to add.
May I throw some advice in too? Just
Yes.
I mean, this is kind of just real world advice. The odds of you going somewhere to a law firm or somewhere, and that's going to be what you're going to do for the rest of your life, are probably not that great. As you know, the world is changing. There's a lot of AI going on, and a lot of law practice is going in that way. They'll never be able to automate, I think, the creativity part of what goes in lawyers' minds. But I will encourage you to be flexible. Don't tell yourself you're pigeonholed. Don't tell yourself there's nothing else I can do, because that's not true. I don't care how long you've been in an area. If something starts not feeling right, it's time to go. You know, and John S. and I kind of had a similar experience. I mean, I was a big law firm lawyer for decades, and then I started my own practice. Never, you know, I've been courted to go back. I won't go back. There is a lot of freedom that you have in your life by having your own firm, not just yourself or others. But be open to change and be ready to move. I went, as I said, I went into this kicking and screaming, and now I love it. So, and I have a bunch of years of it.
And John S., were you kicking and screaming when you switched into tax, or was it
I mean,
easier?
I didn't go kicking, you know, no kicking and screaming into tax. I mean, you know, I look at the estate planning practice, and I mean, it is tax heavy for me. But, you know, like it lined up a lot with what I'd done. And to follow on John B., yeah, I mean, look, I worked for 3 different firms before I opened my own. While I probably won't switch sides and go work for the IRS, it's not unreasonable for me to think that, you know, somewhere down the line, I may like just get tired of running my own practice. As one of my mentors told me years ago, it's like, you know, all I did was trade the headaches of working for somebody else for the headaches of working for myself. I may change my mind on that at some point, you know, like, who knows? I won't say never, but for me, what does that look like? I'm probably not going to go back to working in a law firm. If I were to do that, I'd probably go work for a bank or a trust company. And, you know, it's the in-house jobs that you hear about in estate planning really aren't necessary. Like, nobody's calling me up and like, hey, will you be general counsel for my business? It's more along the lines of, hey, would you like to be a senior, you know, wealth advisor, trust advisor, whatever they call it in our trust company, in which case the job looks a lot alike, but it's just, you know, operating from the trustee side instead of from the client side.
You mentioned that you had a mentor just now that kind of gave you the headache for one, headache for the other. starting out working for a firm or, working for the government, do you think that you could practice in your area now without having had that experience? Or do you think that the actual working with others in your practice area for tax is necessary?
I think it's very necessary. And I don't even know if it's limited just to tax. I remember my first job, I think I was in, it was like the third or fourth month I'd been in the job. They had hired 2 new associates at the same time, me and another guy who later became, through working together, we became friends. And one of the partners just brought us in and was like, look, we're not trying to insult you, but for the next 2 or 3 years, you're pretty much going to feel like an idiot every day. And we want you to know that's normal. That's okay. Like you'll have little flashes where you think you know what you're doing. That's fine. If that feeling persists more than a day, you need to come talk to us because you're probably doing something very wrong and we need to know about it. And it's true, just like the 2 or 3 years of just getting in there and having somebody else kind of tell you, do it this way, don't do it that way. I look at it now with the students I have who work for me with, just you need somebody who's been there and kind of knows what the right answer looks like, who's on your side. And, at this point, I'm the top lawyer in my firm. I've got my friends that I can call and say, I'm not sure if I'm doing this right. Does this sound right? And, mostly they're all, small or solo firms where they get it because, it's the free exchange of, they know when they've got a question about tax, they're going to pick up the phone and call me, or if they've got something similar that, I may not be in a big firm, but I at least have the backing of my network that way.
Right. Joy, your experience is a little bit different because, I know that as a chief counsel attorney, you kind of get all your own cases and it's like, here, take care of this now for the rest of the year, but you do have a mentor. Do you think that from your perspective as someone who gets cases and has to start them, kind of from beginning to end, that it's a practice area for federal taxation that you can kind of do on your own without having the training of someone ahead of you doing the same thing?
I think like John S. said, I don't think there's any area of practice of law that one can just go off on his or her own. Yes, like we get to, get assigned our own caseload and off you go. But no, the way chief counsel works, we're all assigned to mentors. I have mentor. In fact, if you ask me, my manager is my greatest mentor. Like, okay. And you have, and because chief counsel is more like a one unit. So I have literally attorneys next door, the other way that I can go to and get, answers to questions when I need help. And I don't think I could have possibly done it without, all the people I've, that have helped me along the way. And so it's really beneficial. Even I have mentors outside my office, just like John S. said, I still call on you, even though you're in another office. Courtney, what do you think about this? It helps a lot. It's an advantage having people that are, pretty much worth of knowledge that you can always tap in and ask, okay, what do you think about this? And I'm someone that is just hungry for knowledge. Even when I think I know what it is, I want to get your perspective on that. It doesn't hurt, no amount of knowledge is a waste. So mentorship, I think is a very valuable program that every student should reach out and get one, not just one, as many as you can get in every field.
Great.
Courtney,
John B., you've been practicing I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I didn't want to interrupt, but we had a question that I thought was kind of timely. I didn't want to miss.
Oh, please.
You guys
I'm not getting alerted. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. So I had 2 questions come in. One, I think is a little bit more timely right here. So the student is asking, and most of our students are first year, so they're still getting an understanding and a grasp on what this tax law career looks like, right? So everyone's response may be a little bit different, but the question is, I have pictured tax law as going to court after someone makes an error or does not tell the truth on their returns, but it seems like there's a lot more to this. Can you all explain a little bit more about what your day-to-day consists of?
Sure, and I guess whoever wants to take it. So I didn't see who posed the question, but we have different practice areas. So Joy and I work for the federal government currently. John works in private practice with estate and gift and tax planning, and then John B works in property tax. So you'll hear those different areas and what those days seem like. So whoever wants to go ahead. I guess John B, you seem like you were getting ready to explain.
Yeah, let me take a stab. I do want to say, and I want to echo what Joy and John said. You cannot practice law in isolation, period.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
Okay, I have people that I call because I still need to think through ideas. Because as brilliant as I think I am, sometimes my ideas aren't. And this John asked something again, those of you who are starting out need to think about. Just because you're good at practicing law does not mean you're good at running a business, and practicing law is running a business. And there's a lot of I've made most of the mistakes I've made in my career on the running the business side. So I guess the question is, what is my day like? No, mine's a litigation practice. I wish, and I love it. I love it when people actually call me ahead of time before they do something and ask me how to plan something out so that they will not get into trouble. But I got to tell you, that's 1% of my practice. The rest of my practice, it's of a very natural litigation. We do some of the administrative law stuff that leads up to the litigation, but it's very much that daily and trying to keep up with the court docket and making sure that you're not dropping balls, you're answering discovery, you are being creative where you need to be creative, but most of it is just making sure it's the discipline of practicing a litigation practice.
So it sounds like John B's practice doesn't have a lot to do with tax returns per se, but it has equally as much litigation practice, where I know John S. said earlier that he doesn't litigate doesn't go to court or deal with tax returns. Is that true, John S.?
Right. I mean, I'll go to court for uncontested probate matters. So I, walk in basically knowing what the result's going to be. And that's right. I also generally don't do tax returns. So the only tax returns I will prepare are the estate tax return, so Form 706, the gift tax return 709, and expatriation returns. I'm not doing 1040s, 1041s, or 1120s. Those are much better done by the CPAs who do those on a regular basis. My license technically could cover it, but I leave that to the people who do those every year. There's no benefit in me trying to piece that together for a client.
And then Joy, you work with federal tax returns all the time. Right.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean we file returns, right?
Right.
We don't necessarily file returns, but I think to work with counsel, you need to have a basic understanding of tax returns, because most often the issues you're dealing with hinges on the tax return itself. So, or you're talking about maybe a non-filer, or someone had actually filed, but then they're claiming business expenses that they can't actually substantiate, or they are claiming deductions or credits that they cannot actually support. So you just have to have an understanding of basic tax return, but we're not necessarily filing, tax returns or preparing them. That's pretty much what it is. But at the end of the day, everything about our office too is not about litigation. Okay, we do have advisory opinion to the IRS. So say they want to issue a notice of deficiency, and they need you to review it and be sure that, okay, it is legally supported. And there's some issues that could come up and say, hey, the other day I got one, there was a non-judicial sale, and when the county sold, there was extra proceeds. Can we keep it? Can we not keep it? So everything is not, really just litigation, but we do tax litigation. When we don't resolve it, the next place is to take it to the tax court.
Right, exactly. So what I want to do is, It's 5:47. So I want to let us say, I have more questions to ask the panelists for sure, because I'm always prepared. But what I want to do is kind of wrap up our portion of the questions and then open the floor up for you guys to jump in and ask questions. And then if you don't have any, we can go back into our prepared notes. But just to recap, in case some people came in later, you have myself and Joy. We are federal government attorneys. We work for the IRS Office of Chief Counsel. I also work for the Department of Justice and I teach in tax. John S., he has his own practice and is working in estate and gift taxation. John B. does property tax. There are so many different types of tax practices that you can get into. I think I did see one question that someone put in there that I think we may have, oops, I'm not gonna share my screen. So let's bring that back. That we may have touched on about having if you need a CPA license or practice tax law. But as you guys are putting your questions in or whatever you're thinking of, kind of target it to who you think you would like a response from. If you want a response from everybody, that is just as fine. You can hear different perspectives about what you have. So what we can do is kind of do a quick little wrap up. Each person can say a couple words and about whatever I may not have asked you. And then as you guys are thinking about your questions, just feel free to type them in. Or if you want a little FaceTime, go ahead and throw your cameras on. And you can ask your question, you know, face to face if you want to. But so Joy, if you want to say a couple things, and then John S., then John B.
Yeah, I think I'm more than happy to say something. We are talking to students from my school. So, and I think it's a unique thing that are mostly 1L students, because I mean, they don't get to take tax law till about second year, which is the only time they can, but it's good they know now, because what could sometimes, I know what happened during my time is none of us was thinking about tax law. The only reason tax law, you know, came up was because of the GPA threshold thing. So, but to get involved at this stage is beautiful. And it's not every day you find students thinking about tax law, just like, because some of the questions you were asking, some people think you need to have an accounting or finance background to go into tax law. Some think, oh, tax law is boring, or you need to be quote unquote very, very brilliant. You know, tax lawyers are seen as very smart people. But I think any student can do well in tax law. All it needs is for you to have a curious mind. And there's so many, see, John S. is doing very well in his practice. John B. is doing well in his practice. Here I am in Chief Counsel with IRS. We don't get, you know, so highly paid compared to people maybe in private practice. But the good thing is that there's so many benefits, you know. We have the loan forgiveness program. You know, when you work with the government for 10 years, you can get that off. And you can pretty much, the unique thing about tax court is once you get your tax bar card, you can pretty much practice anywhere. You know, so you can say, okay, I don't want to be in Houston. I want to be able to practice in Florida. You can actually move to Florida. We have an office in Florida, and you will practice in Florida. In tax law, you can move. Courtney is sitting there. She's already an adjunct professor in this school, and she graduated from that school. So when you look at it, you find that it's something that is very doable, and you can't go wrong doing it. And at the end of the day, if you do get bored in doing tax law, we've already identified that you can still move on in-house. You can go to the banks and do financial planning or estate planning. So at the end, it's very good that you guys are getting in on it now, and then knowing fully well, like with the Office of Chief Counsel, I believe it's 25% of the top 25%, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's good. As you're in 1L year right now, that you already know. So you have interest in tax law, and maybe you're looking at joining us with Chief Counsel. You know early on to start now to say, hey, I got to make that, you know, top 25% of my class, as against finding out when you already have lost, you know, chances of getting that. So I think it's a very good thing that you guys joined, you know, participating in this early on as a 1L student. So, and if you ever need help, like Courtney said, I'm still an ambassador of that school. I would do anything for my school anytime, any day. Please,
right.
Miss Nikki Smith knows. She walked me through career services. So to give back, I'll be more than happy anytime, any day. So reach out to me. I think Miss Nikki has my email address. Let me guide you. Let me walk you through it, whichever path you want to follow. But I'll be more than happy to find you in Chief Counsel, actually.
Excellent.
Thank you, Joy.
John S., some wrap up words?
I mean, again, it's a great practice if you can get, if you could find the taxes that you like dealing with. Sorry to say, mostly you will have to deal with some numbers that scare some people off, but they're usually not bad. It's not as bad as calculus or anything that bad.
And John B.
Well, I have a couple of things I want to say. Following on John S.'s comments there, I think one of my favorite lines is that property tax is math for people who are bad at math. I mean, there is no great answer to what is the building worth that you are in right now. And we can argue about that to no end. There's some basic formulas we'll play with, but at the end, it's very subjective. So yeah, in other words, if you're scared of math, don't worry about it here. Somebody did ask in the chat, are there any benefits of having a CPA license if you want to practice tax law? Let me answer that two ways. First of all, is particularly since we're dealing with 1Ls here mostly, anything you can have, get, do that is going to distinguish your resume from everybody else's resume, by all means, put it on there, get it, highlight it, whatever, because that's how you get in the door somewhere. So I've looked at a zillion resumes, and it's always kind of that one that's like, well, that's interesting. Then I say, let's get them in, let's talk to that person. And then afterwards, you can't go wrong with being a CPA and almost any kind of practice out there, particularly when you're talking about tax, because that way it'll help you understand stuff and give you a leg up on everybody else. Gosh, I'm not sure what else I was going to say, but it's a practical way. Just look, it's a long career. It's a tough career, and just be clear about that. The practice of law is not easy. I don't care what area you go into. I mean, if you were to go to a bar seminar today of almost any length, there is going to be an hour program that's going to tell you of the options available to combat alcoholism in the bar. And they will tell you that it starts in law school, that's where people start learning to cope with their stress by drinking. And so it's tough. Not many drugs, but it's alcohol that Laura's favorite place to go. So you're going to prepare yourself the best way you can. Find something that you think is fun. Because you're going to have days, even when you're doing fun, that it's not fun. And I'm sure Joy and Courtney and John can tell you the same thing. I mean, you may love it. I love it. I got days where I just don't want to do it. And so, but find your spot, find yourself, and recognize that what you're going through right now is stressful. And if you need the help, find the help. And the same thing, even after you get licensed. This is one of the most stressful professions. It is one of the most rewarding professions you get in, because you can help people. If you have a heart, which most lawyers do, to solve problems for others, to make other people's lives easier and better, that you can't be in a better place. No matter where you practice, what your law practice is.
Thank you. So John S., we have a question for you. And I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
Oh yeah, just to follow up on it, what John B was saying is like we're not here just to kind of liberally apply billable hours in service of a client. We're here to move a needle for our clients, and they want to see specific results, not just, well, I went in there and I tried real hard. And it's, it's like, well, I spent 5 hours researching this and I didn't find the answer. Well, what does the client get from that? Even if you're working for the federal government, I tried real hard, probably doesn't work too well on the, I don't know, what, GS7, GS12, or
14.
4010. Yeah, what, whoever you're reporting to, I'm not gonna like everybody's looking for a result from you, the lawyer, not just I went in and I thought real hard about it. So it's something that it takes a while to see, is like, oh no, the clients don't care if I thought really hard and couldn't come up with it. They want to know, what do I do with this?
Right. There was a question in the chat that John responded to. I don't know if you guys all saw that are watching, but
yeah, and just to reiterate that.
Right. Thank you.
It's a good question.
Right.
It's very scary to say, oh my God, if I turn away litigation, am I gonna run out of clients? And no, I've got plenty of clients. Do I turn people away every day that don't look good for me? That's right, I do. I send lots of work out because people end up finding my website and say, oh, well, John can help me challenge this will. John can help me set up a guardianship for my dad. John can help me set up Medicaid planning for my mother. And those are things that are outside of my area. I have people, I send all sorts of stuff. I have 6 different probate litigators I send work to, and I know why I send it to each. One of them's better, just small, discrete matters. One of them's better if there's a company involved. They're, as hard as it may sound, like the more you niche down, the easier it is for people to know, oh, I'm going to pick up the phone and call Yvette for this thing. This is Yvette's problem. And she's the one who can turn, like she can make things happen for this type of problem. For anything else, I'm not going to bother her because she's not the right one. Maybe, like, I get a lot of calls, again, as my kind of family lawyer, I get a lot of calls of, John, what do we do with this? And a lot of times I'll say, I don't know, but you need to call this person. And so my Rolodex is one of my biggest tools. I just know people, clients have problems, like, how do we get out of this? I don't know, call this person. Have them tell you how to do it. And it makes it so much easier knowing this is how I can help. And if it doesn't look like something I can help on, I just get rid of it. And that's to the client's benefit. I'm not trying to take money for them to do something I don't know how to do.
Right. Something else. Oh, that says thank you. Okay. So looks like we should maybe wrap it up. Let me think. Is there anything that I want to say? Utilize your career services. Nikki wasn't there when I was there, but my career services was very instrumental in helping me to navigate the whole employment process. So if you guys are all I don't think you're all 1Ls, but mostly 1Ls, definitely work with your career services. We just wanted to give you kind of a taste of some different areas in tax that you could get into. Don't feel like if you want to become a tax attorney, you have to draft tax returns and be good at math and be a CPA or accountant. You don't have to. These are all benefits, right? But you don't have to. So you can see it's a pretty broad scope. Try and get good grades in school. I know that's not the easiest thing to do, but that always makes you more marketable, especially if you're trying to get selected, like John B said, something on your resume, or, try and distinguish yourself from everybody else that's trying to get the same positions as you.
Courtney,
So,
Joy,
yes.
a little bit I know, excuse me, both Bruce Niak and John Strohmeyer have a little bit of different practice area. But while we have the two of you here from the IRS, do you want to talk a little bit more about how your recruiting process is structured?
Oh yeah, I can definitely hang out. I don't know if you want me to just go into it right now, or if you want to.
I will. Are there any other students on the line that have specific questions for any of the panelists? I think we answered everyone who put a question in the chat. Okay, so I'll officially go ahead and conclude the program. And if our panelists want to stay on, if there's any questions, lingering questions that anyone would like to ask, I'll go ahead and stop the recording at this point. And again, this will be posted on our YouTube channel probably later this week. Thank you all for attending. Thank you all of our students who joined. And thank you all of our panelists for taking time out of your busy day and evening to speak with the students this evening. And we're so happy that you were able to join us. So I'm just going to stop.